What comes to mind when you hear the words extravagant flagship phone? Chances are it's either the Xiaomi Mi Mix series, or more than likely, the Samsung Galaxy Note. For nearly a decade, it's been the large screen phone that does it all. A large screen, massive battery, more features than any one person could possibly need. And let's not forget the trusty S Pen. The marquee feature of the Samsung flagship that's captivated consumers with its ability to turn the phone into a go-anywhere, water-resistant notepad. A small easel for drawing, and so much more with its novel air gesture tricks. There was a time where competitors mocked Samsung for producing a phone with such a large display, but lo and behold, the bezel-less trend, the ever-growing aspect ratios, and trimming down of bezels. And even long before that, pushed even the likes of Apple to a 5.3-inch plus display size. Turns out it wasn't such a bad call after all, huh? With the latest iteration of the Note line, we've seen 3 different Note models, not including the 5G variants, which I wholeheartedly believe is a huge waste of money. But that's a discussion for another time. There's the standard Note 10, the Note 10 Plus, and the unusual Note 10 Lite. This year, the Note feels slightly less feature-rich, with the removal of the beloved 3.5mm headphone jack. And no, I'm not letting that port go. But it does bring some great additions to the Note line as well, such as the gorgeous larger display, new S Pen features, and a behemoth battery, to name a few. So with that being said, is the Note 10 Plus a worthy successor to one of last year's best phones? Should you upgrade to the Note 10 Plus? I'm Dave with TechDove. Let's find out. It should come as no surprise that the Note 10 Plus features one of the very best displays of any smartphone, depending on how important a 120Hz refresh rate is to you, as found on the S20 line of phones. And yes, I know, this review is really late. The Note 10 Plus features a gorgeous 6.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. Marketing jargon aside, this means it has a camera cutout in the display, which even on the S10 Plus didn't bother me either by its location or its size and shape. So once again, I welcome the display cutouts. This isn't to say I'm particularly bothered by the notches used by other companies though. I'm just happy most manufacturers are adopting OLED rather than LCD in 2019 or 2020. But I digress. That display weighs in at 3040 by 1440 pixels in resolution with an aspect ratio of 19:9, giving it a pixel density of 498 ppi and an incredible 91% screen-to-body ratio, covered in Corning Gorilla Glass 6. Just for reference, the iPhone 11 Pro Max has a screen-to-body ratio of 84%. And man, is this display something to behold. Despite capping off at a maximum refresh rate of 60Hz, it's still a Samsung display, and thusly is the display benchmark for the rest of the industry, boasting beautiful colors, deep blacks, and a nearly unlimited contrast ratio. Some of you out there will be pleased to know that the signature Samsung curve is far less severe than it has been in years past. For me, I'm kind of a fan of that steep drop-off to the metal frame, but I'll survive. Of note is the Wacom digitizer. More on that later on in the review. The screen is always the main component of a Samsung phone I look forward to most, and it has me excited for the future of the Note series, with that eventual Note 20, or whatever it's going to be called, and its 120Hz display. Another year, another phone made out of glass and metal. Glass up front, glass around back. Interestingly enough, Samsung had a slight marketing snafu this time around. Their marketing material for the Note series had this frame material pegged as stainless steel, which was later corrected to reflect the actual frame material. Aluminum. That slip up aside, it's still a beastly phone. Well, as beastly as 2 sheets of Gorilla Glass 6 meeting at an insanely thin aluminum frame can be. I'd much prefer to have something like titanium or even a full-body aluminum phone, since wireless charging has never been too high on my list of wants in a premium phone anyway. That aside, it's a well-built phone. It feels great in the hand, and especially important to me is the layout of the phone's buttons. The few that it actually has, of course. This is the first phone in a while that's made for left-handed people. More on that in a second. On the right side, it is completely blank aside from some antenna bands. On top is a SIM card / micro SD card tray. Next to that is the top stereo speaker port. And next to that is one of the noise-canceling microphones. On the left side is a volume rocker and power plus Bixby button. Come on, Samsung. Nobody actually uses Bixby. Oddly enough, when this phone was first released, you had to drag down the notification tray to access the power off menu. An odd decision to be sure. However, this was patched later on and adds more features to the power button, such as a single press, a double press, or a press and hold to launch apps or power off the phone. Anyway, on the bottom is the S Pen silo, the second of the stereo speaker pair, another microphone, and, unfortunately, no headphone jack. Samsung says this was in order to fit in the 4300 mAh battery, but as we have seen with the Mi Note 10 with a 5100 mAh battery, this is not the case. Samsung just wants to sell more of their Galaxy Buds. Nice move there, Apple Jr. Round back is the stellar quad camera system, the LED flash, and the heart rate sensor. More on that later on. Up front is the gorgeous 6.8-inch QHD display with its 10 megapixel hole punch selfie camera. This is my favorite implementation of the high screen to body ratio solution so far. Though pop-up cameras are cool. A few notable phones over the years have had a lasting impact on the smartphone market. For example, the HTC One M7 with its superb metal unibody design, low-light photography, and its groundbreaking front-firing stereo speakers, which were once considered gimmicks. Well, they have had a long-lasting effect on the landscape, even still today. You might be thinking, why is he bringing this up? What does this have to do with a Samsung phone? A lot, actually. Those stereo speakers I mentioned are something most, if not all, flagship phones are utilizing today, 7 years after the One M7 debuted. The Note 10 line is no different. And while they aren't front-facing speakers, since the bezel-less designs of today and massive front-facing speaker grills don't exactly go hand in hand, the stereo speaker pair is ever-present nonetheless. One front-firing speaker that doubles as the earpiece and a bottom-mounted speaker, which in tandem creates a great-sounding stereo soundstage. You'd be hard-pressed to find a phone these days that doesn't use this configuration. Note 10 Plus here shares the same philosophy, and man do they sound great. They're decently loud, clear, and have a decent amount of bass, especially for something this size. As per usual, they sound better than a cheap Bluetooth speaker, but they're not going to be your go-to for a wild frat party or anything. But they are great for casual listening, as well as gaming or content consumption without headphones. The second trend started long ago is a focus on high-fidelity wired audio, which started way back in 2014 with the LG V10 and its crazy 32-bit DAC. And while for the most part the 3.5mm headphone jack has died on 98% of flagship phones, the legacy of high-fidelity audio lives on through the USB-C port. Note 10 Plus out of the box is capable of 24-bit audio through its USB-C port, with the bundled AKG earbuds. Worth noting is the lack of a USB-C to 3.5mm dongle in the box, though there are a number of great dongles from other manufacturers that will work with the Note. You only need to look online for them. I'm pleased to say that in this regard the Note really does sound great from the USB-C port or the built-in speakers. It's top-notch up there with the Pixels and iPhones of the world. It's nice to see Samsung is committed to moving forward with hi-fi audio, rather than standing still as they did from the S5 to S8 generations. The run-of-the-mill processor for Android phones in 2019 was the Snapdragon 855, for most markets and most brands anyway. But only a marginal difference from the Snapdragon 845 to the 855 is a significant upgrade in terms of efficiency, a trend I'm very happy to see, in combination with the increases in battery size and charging speeds. For the first time in a long time, I haven't felt the need to make the latest and greatest phone my daily driver. The E55 is just such a great SoC that when it came time to choose between swapping my S10 Plus for an S20, I passed on the S20 in favor of the next gen Note due this year. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a spec junkie, and even with the Snapdragon 865 phones looming on the horizon, I think I'll just stick with my 855 for 1 or 2 more years. That being said, the Note 10 is a very competent, well-performing phone, both in terms of day-to-day speed and battery life. More on that later. You'll be hard-pressed to notice any stutter, lags, or slowdowns as I've experienced on the most recent batch of iPhones, which have been a genuine nightmare in comparison to the XS Max I had last year. Right, I know, this is about the Note 10 Plus, not that fruit-based phone. Just went on a bit of a tangent there. Everything is fine. I tend to do quite a bit of gaming on the go, and as expected, the Note 10 Plus running Android 10 with Samsung's One UI 2.0 on top is a screamer, as the S10 Plus was. With 12GB of RAM on all models, it's pretty difficult to bog this thing down. While yes, on paper, 12GB might seem like overkill for a phone, with Samsung's DeX on board, it sort of starts to perhaps make a bit more sense. If you're unfamiliar with DeX or what it does, you needn't worry. DeX allows you to plug your phone into a display, which unlocks a desktop-like user interface, so that you may harness all that processing power and RAM in a more productive way. You can even use the phone's display as a trackpad of sorts, but you'll be happy to know that it's not only to interact with this faux display format. If you have a USB-C dongle, like this one, you can even plug in a keyboard and mouse. And Samsung even sells a dock you can use as well. Aside from the aforementioned DeX capabilities, if you're potentially looking to pick up a modern Samsung device, you'll be happy to hear that multitasking is great. There's more than enough raw horsepower to get the job done here. And with that gorgeous display, it's a joy too. Especially when you factor in the incredible versatility that is the S Pen. We'll get to that in a bit, just hang tight. The modern combination of a large battery and a more efficient processor is not a new concept. It's been a staple of budget and mid-range phones for years. However, now with modern flagships, we're creeping ever closer to that utopia of raw performance and long-lasting battery life. This is especially evident in the Note 10 Plus, as well as the latest iPhones. You don't have to choose one over the other anymore. The Note packs a 4300 mAh battery, which was very quickly eclipsed by the S20 Ultra's 5100 mAh battery. But the Ultra will definitely need it with that combo of a 6.9-inch screen and a 120Hz refresh rate, topped off with 5G connectivity. The cell in the Note, paired with its 1080p plus resolution out of the box and its power-efficient processor, means it's an endurance champ, notching me just about 10.5 hours of screen-on time over the course of a few lighter days. On heavier days, it was still able to eke out 7.5 to 8 hours of screen-on time. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Power users will have nothing to worry about with this phone, and if you're finding yourself with a case of outlet anxiety, it has fast wireless charging at 12 to 15 watts. Or you can use its wired charger, which is 25 watts, right out of the box. Samsung also sells a 45 watt fast charger, but I think most will be fine with the 25 watt unit, as it will top you up from 0 to 50% in around 25 minutes, and from 0 to 100 in just an hour and 30 minutes. And sure, there are a plethora of battery saving measures baked right into Android, but trust me, you won't be needing them. Now we come to the fun part, software. There's a lot to cover here, so I'll try to explain as best I can without boring you with a 10-minute long section here. Since its inception, the Samsung Galaxy series of phones have had one main belief: throwing every possible feature into every Galaxy phone. The Note 10 Plus is no exception to the rule, even if it doesn't have every feature. The headphone jack. It all begins with the user interface. Samsung's One UI 2.0 skin on top of Android. This is Samsung's cleanest skin yet. It looks and feels familiar in terms of Samsung software, but yet it's so much less cluttered. Much less bloated and far less cartoony than the days of TouchWiz. Of course, the typical Samsung amenities are still present, such as always on display, the Edge menu for contacts and apps. But what is new this year, despite its usefulness being highly questionable, are the new S Pen gestures. You can wave your S Pen side to side like a wand to go forward or back on a track in some music apps. You can wave up or down to adjust volume as well. On the camera app, you can wave up or down to change between front and rear cameras, which I do find useful for tripod or group shots. Now listen, I'm not going to sit here and dismiss these features just because I personally find them gimmicky, as if Samsung's execs wondered how to make the Note 10 S Pen just ever slightly more feature-packed than that of the Note 9. But I'm also not going to label them as revolutionary must-have features either. What is a revolutionary feature is the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. And no, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of hating on this thing, even if I would have preferred a slightly lower placement on the display, like the S10 family. It's been reliable for me, and I can't say I've been wanting for any speed boost either. Even with a glass screen protector, it's about 99% reliable, sometimes requiring me to press a little harder, or a little longer. The Note has so many features I'm still discovering things. Most of which I don't use, but I'm sure someone does. So cheers to that, Samsung. Thanks for options and freedom of control. Ask anyone what the main thing they're looking for in a phone is, and most likely they'll tell you the cameras. All of our daily lives are documented with photos, and with good reason. We all always have a camera on us. And with how good phone cameras have become, it's no surprise to find that the shooters on this phone are extraordinary. I even did a blind camera test between the Note and the iPhone 11 Pro Max a few months back over on my Instagram, where most people preferred the images that turned out to be from the Note. If that's not saying something big for what Samsung has accomplished, I'm not sure that anything will. Anyway, before I go off the rails and start a fanboy war, because both phones are great in their own ways, let's talk about those cameras a bit more. Around back, we have a quad camera system comprised of a 12 megapixel main sensor with Samsung's variable aperture system, between f1.5 and f2.4 for low light shots on the wider end, and preservation of highlights on the narrow end. This sensor is equipped with phase detection autofocus as well as optical image stabilization. Daytime images are detailed, sharp, and just ever so slightly saturated. A change from past Samsung flagships, which dialed up the saturation a little too high for my liking. Night mode is present here, and the shots are decent enough, if not a bit noisier than the competition from Google or Apple, but they're perfectly serviceable. Anywho, the second of the 5 total cameras outfitted to this phone is the 12 megapixel 2x optical zoom telephoto camera, coming in at an f2.1 aperture, also with phase detection autofocus and optical image stabilization. And this is one of the better telephoto lenses I've experienced in recent years. The zoom is fast, accurate, and shots nearly mimic the color science of the main sensor. Unfortunately, night mode is not available here for some reason. The third, and my personal favorite of the 3 cameras, is the 16 megapixel ultra-wide with an aperture of f2.2 and a field of view of 120 degrees. A tad bit less than the 123 degrees of the S10 Plus, but still very, very wide, all while avoiding the fisheye distortion around the edge of the photos. Night mode is available on this lens with varying degrees of success. It really is hit or miss. It's finicky and needs just the right amount of light, or you're going to have a bad time. The daytime shots are great though. As with the telephoto lens, the color science is on par with the standard main lens, which is further bolstered by Samsung's fantastic Super Steady mode. Just one of many of the great camera features available here, including an Instagram mode, which will post your photo directly to Instagram. Incredibly useful if you're the type to post your lunch all the time. Couldn't be me though, but I'm not hating. All 4 cameras, aside from the rear 0.3 megapixel depth sensor, which is for the live focus shots Samsung is so keen on, are capable of up to 4K 60 FPS video recording. Aside from the front 10 megapixel f2.2 aperture selfie camera, which is capped at 4K 30 FPS. More on that in just a minute. The videos from this phone, whether at 1080p or 4K, look brilliant. While not quite iPhone level, they're still going to blow you away. The color, the detail, the HDR, it's all top tier flagship material. Just have a look for yourself. Also making its return for the Note 10 Plus is Super Slow Mode, which is 960 FPS recording in short bursts at 720p. Which can be fun, especially for videos of pets. It's been really fun to use while my German Shepherd puppy tumbles around the yard. It's just a bit ridiculous having all these cameras on one phone. And I'd be lying if I said it's not entirely necessary, because so many good DSLR cameras are available for around the same price as a modern flagship phone. But having so many options on something that fits in your pocket is great. Plus, something has to help to justify these outrageously high prices, right? And speaking of pricing, the Note 10 Plus was released in a few variants. The base model 256GB 4G model coming in at a whopping $1,100, and the higher end 512GB model at $1,200. And finally the 5G version at $1,300 for the 256GB model, or $1,400 for the 512GB model. Not that I suggest anyone buy a 5G model right now, since the infrastructure for 5G doesn't even cover an entire city yet. And the hit on battery life just isn't worth it in my opinion. I'd stick with the base 256GB model, as I did, and toss a microSD card in it if you're looking for more space. In a world of ever-evolving camera features and ever-climbing market prices for flagship smartphones, does Note 10 Plus do anything to justify its price tag? Well, that's a bit of a mixed bag. Yes and no. I'd say yes because of how amazing the screen, cameras, and battery life are. This is truly one of the best phones Samsung has ever made, albeit minus the headphone jack. Yes, I'm still salty about that. But because I'm posting this review so late after the original launch of the Note 10, I'm gonna have to say no, since the S20 line is here and brings most of what the Note has and much more. Minus the S Pen, of course. And the Note 20 is just around the corner as of this video's released in July of 2020. Likely bringing with it an even larger, higher refresh rate display and a larger battery. So in conclusion, to wrap this all up, the Note 10 family, as confusing as they are stellar, stout, feature-packed phones that have my seal of approval. And as contradictory as this is going to sound, the Note 10 Plus is an upgrade that Note 9 owners should ignore. I'm Dave with TechDev. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you. Stay tuned as I have Apple Watch Series 5 coverage coming very soon, followed by my Galaxy Z Flip review. Follow me on Instagram for some behind the scenes, and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video.